Hey everybody, this is Chris from Pie for Breakfast Studios, and I am, so those of you who follow me on Twitter might know that I am working on a project that is Little Nemo and the Nightmare Fiends, which is a platformer based on the Little Nemo comic strip, and we are doing all of the animation for the game by hand, and I've been using Blender 2.8's new 2D animation tools that is an offshoot of their grease pencil tool that they've had for a while. And a lot of people have asked me, how are you doing this? Are there any tutorials out there? And there are some tutorials on how to get started with this tool, but nothing really showing the process that I'm doing, which is, taking this and turning it into, animation for games. So I thought I'd do a short video talking about, our project, but also, how we are doing what we're doing with the character. So I've brought Nemo along with me here. And, he has things like a run cycle. He has little idle animation. He hits stuff with his sword, and we've even got a jump. I just finished the jump earlier today. Let's find it. It has a little squash and stretch to it. Boring. And he goes into a jump pose, kind of like the one in the NES game, which our game is not based on the NES game, but it is, we wanted to have some little references to it in there. But so this is going to be a video showing, how I've laid out this file to use this tool, just in general, because some people are wondering, how do I use this tool, period. But I'm going to skew this a little bit towards how I've been doing it to export game sprites for the Nemo game. But, this video also, FYI, is going to assume that you know how to use Blender in general. I'm not going to go into the basics of the interface and things like that. I'm going to call out the names of windows where I need to, but overall I'm going to keep things pretty focused on, looking at how to specifically do the 2D tools. So, let's check it out. So, a few things that I have here that I want to show off before I get into, drawing anything new is, I'm not going to draw more Nemo. I'm going to draw like a new, file. But I wanted to show a few things off here. First of all is, generally to work in this mode, you're going to have a 3D viewport, and it's going to be set to a front view. And one of the things that you're going to see here is that if I click this object, Nemo is a whole object. Is he active? Is he the active object? I think he is the active object. But if I go to edit mode, each of these lines that I've drawn, each of these, shadows and fills that I've done are actually mesh objects just drawn in 2D. And the reason that that's really important is that with this tool, and one of the reasons I really like it, is that you are not just getting, a raster. So I know a lot of people like to hand animate their game sprites in like Photoshop, for example. And one nice thing about this is that these are not just raster graphics, so I can do something like, let me get into the idle pose. So in his idle, I can do something like, you see the difference here, it's very subtle, but, take this standing pose and then scale it up, like basically stretch it a little bit. I can treat this like mesh, and I realize you can do that in things like Flash, but, Flash is not what it once was. So, the great thing is that this this is mesh. We can treat this like 3D mesh. We can do all the things that we do to our 3D objects in Blender, and that can be really powerful. So that's one thing that I really like about this, is that you can treat it like mesh. And another area where that's really relevant is, I've been occasionally doing something where maybe I'm drawing. Actually, you can kind of see an example of this here. If I zoom in really far, you see this doesn't quite match up, and this shadow doesn't quite match up in cover, and that's not really going to be noticeable in the final sprite. But let's say I made a bigger mistake with that. I can click this in edit mode, and then I can go to sculpt mode. One of my favorite things about this is that you have the full use of the Blender tool set here. So, for those who don't know, Blender has an internal sculpt tool, and I can, actually go in and, sculpt lines with this thing. So, if I do kind of a jagged line, and let me just undo this so I just keep all my sprites consistent. Yeah. So let's say I drew a line that was kind of jagged and rough. Let me go here. Let me go on one of my line layers. I'm going to show this more step by step. I'm just kind of introducing the thing. And it should maybe be at 45. So let's say I have, kind of a line that's a little jagged here, right? I could go into edit mode, make sure this is highlighted, sculpt mode, and I have, again, a set of sculpt tools that I can use to maybe smooth it out, or move points around if I want them to be in a different place. So having access to this beyond just, a draw mode is really nice. Because, in draw mode, I can do things like erase it. The downside of it being erased is that, you want to make sure all the, remember it is mesh, so you're trying to make sure all the, I'm going to go to vertex select mode. You want to make sure all the vertices are gone. But, again, as you can see, there are quite a lot of benefits to be able to having the, in addition to a draw mode where you are doing your, the lion's share of your 2D animation work, where you are doing, you have the option to treat it like mesh with edit mode, with Blender's edit mode, or to use Blender's sculpt mode to make fine adjustments. So that's really nice. And I'm pretty sure, I haven't done it myself, but I think you can also rig these. I'm mainly doing full-on 2D animation thing, but I'm pretty sure you can also. I can't imagine there would be a reason for it to have weight paint beyond that, but don't quote me on that. Hopefully, the Blender people. Hopefully that's a thing, and the Blender people won't come after me. But I thought that was something really cool. You have this drawing tool, but because it's got an edit mode and a sculpt mode, I've been finding a lot of use in kind of correcting my lines, especially if you're not using a very high-level tablet. It can be really nice to have. It slows your work down a little bit, but it's nice to have that fallback. So another thing that I really like is that the colors in here in Nemo, if you follow here, I'm not even really using using my outliner. I have it just kind of out of habit. I've been using Blender professionally for about 11 years now. But I'm saying a lot, I apologize. I'm doing this kind of off the cuff. So I have my outliner. I have properties, the stroke properties, and this properties window gives me, even though this is one object, there are layers within the object, so I can, turn off layers of lines. So like there's Nemo when he's in his house and he's not in Slumberland, and he's not going to have his sword with him. And I can do things like turn off the lines, but within each object you have different. Is it within the object? I don't even know, to be honest. So let's see. I don't really feel like making a new Shift A. Grease pencil stroke. Okay, so it is within each object. Yes, because that is a different, this new stroke that I've created by going Shift A, grease pencil stroke, is a different object entirely from Nemo, and it has its own set of layers. See, this is what happens. I usually work on one character at a time because I'm doing game sprites. So now I know. So that's kind of neat. Anyway, within each object, you have different layers on the object. And that allows you to, again, separate things out and work in layers like you would in something like Photoshop. So I have that up here. And that is the... that's just the object properties down here. So on the flip side, okay. So down here, I'm in my materials, and this is really nice to have out because, there we go. This is really nice to have out because what you're seeing here is that within this, I can also have lots and lots of materials. And what those materials are doing for me is, again, this is how you create basically your palette that you're going to work from. You're not working with raster graphics, so these aren't just colors. This is still Blender, which is a 3D program. So these different materials are what you are creating the colors for your character in. It usually comes with a black outline, a red outline, and a gray fill, but you can do lots and lots of things, as you would by pointing over here, add a material slot, then you'd make a new material, and then, name that material, do everything. Where it's unique is you have, materials can either be, they have a stroke and a fill, kind of like in Illustrator, or, Inkscape, where, so like this outer lines, which is the line that's outside of Nemo, because he has that like sort of Art Nouveau line, that thick Art Nouveau line, it is a stroke. And then if I go down to, say, for example, Nemo's pajamas, that's a fill. The difference between a stroke and a fill is if I paint with a stroke, I get that. And if I paint with a fill, so I'm going to do Nemo's pajamas, the line is drawn outside of, a blob of paint. So that's really cool. And then again, each of these strokes and fills is, so there's a fill, the shadow under Nemo's armpit, Nemo's pajamas is a fill, the different lines are lines. I'm having trouble grabbing a line. There's a line. There's another line. But, things can either be lines or, they can be strokes or fills. You can have both. I'm separating them out for the sake of doing ink and paint as two different distinct things. So the other cool thing about this, and one of the reasons I really like this as a tool for making hand-animated game sprites in particular, is that because this is a material and it's not just, raster data that's stored in the pixel, it's stored in a material, your color information can be manipulated. So let's say, I thought Nemo needed pink pajamas. I could change the color of the material, and then it changes Nemo's pajama color in every single frame. And if you've ever used a pixel art program, like a sprite or something similar, where instead of managing the colors in, like in Photoshop, what color you put on a pixel is going to, the pixel is just that color. And if you want to change the color of the pixel, you have to paint over the color you put in. If you're using something like Sprite or GraphicsScale or ProMotion, any of those like specifically pixel art programs, you'll know that those store color information in a palette, and then that, if you want to make a red enemy blue because that's the version of the enemy that takes one extra sword swing to hit, I'm really just talking about Legend of Zelda here, you can change it in the palette, and then all of a sudden, all your frames of animation for your 8-bit Octorok is changed, right? That's how it works here. I can just change the color. I can be like, all right, Nemo is going to be a redhead, and there we go. Nemo can be a redhead. So that's how, that's the other nice thing I like about this, is that I get the benefit of the hand-drawn look, but some of the power of both, being in a 3D program and being able to manipulate this like being in a 3D program, but also the ability to work with color in the way that I do when I'm doing pixel art, which is really cool. So, what does this look like from step one? And let me see what my time is. It's not too bad. How long have I been on? 20 minutes or so, a little less. All right, this shouldn't take too long, but I wanted to show how to do this from step one. So first things first is I'm going to open a new file, and I'm going to go new, and now in 2.8 there is a option for 2D animation. You'll see this when you get a new file option on the start screen as well. So I'm going to click that. I'm going to click don't save because I've done a bunch of mucking around. And then usually when you start, you're actually going to get a white background, and that's okay. That's good. It's really just a view option. So if I go to rendered or material preview, wireframe, solid, okay. To be honest, I can't even remember why I got the gray background on Nemo. I just ended up getting one. So go figure. But I think it's something to do with did I make my world accidentally? Yeah, I mean, like in normal Blender, I can go to this world properties, and I can click color, and I can change the background to whatever I want. So, I could do that if I wanted to. But I'm going to leave it as this, because it gives me a nice, like, animator look. So let's set up our render properties first. Trying to remember where everything is. Okay. So under output properties, I'm going to make my resolution, for the sake of this video, 512 by 512. Obviously, this changes based on your specific needs for your project. Oh, I know why it's that's why. Because it's rendering in the camera view. Okay. Let's see, show gizmo. It's been a while since I've actually worked from a new one, so I'm like getting my feet wet again in the original layout. It was like this until I did a bunch of random stuff. All right, so I've made it 512 resolution by 512. Again, that is over here in my properties editor under world properties. And then I'm going to keep all this the same. 24 or 30, it's not a huge difference in terms of like the output you're going to get for the game engine, simply because you're going to be able to manipulate the animation speed, and we're going to be outputting just some like raw frames. And then, one thing you will want to do under the render properties context, you're going to want to go under film, and you're going to want to click transparent. And let me show you why. If I don't click transparent and I click render image, and let's get my render window. Okay, no surprise, it's white, but if I click transparent and I go to render image, haha, now it's transparent. And why that's important is because remember, we're making game sprites and we will want a transparent background. Now this depends on your particular engine. You may want to have, like a magenta background because you're using an engine that interprets the, one of the corners. It samples one of the corners and then, has your sprite, it makes that the transparent color. Some engines still do that. But, for engines that are working with actual alpha data, you'll want to go to render properties, transparent. So now that's enough talking. Let's get to the drawing. So if I go into material properties, click here. So one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to drag, escape. Okay, there we go. I'm going to make go down. So I'm going to make another properties editor, and I'm going to scroll down in this top one till I get to this, green curly line that's object data properties. This is where I'm going to see my layers that are inside of my stroke. What's going to be my game character. And then down here, I'm going to be in material properties. Now you're going to see I have a black outline material, a red outline material, a gray fill material, and a black dots material. The black dots material just gives you lines that are rendered with black dots, which I've not found a use for, but could be useful. That's pretty neat. And then down here, so we have our, let me show you each these, what you get in these. So under lines, you get this icon here, which is onion skinning, which says I can turn onion skinning on and off. I'll show you what that means in a second if you don't know what onion skinning is. I can turn their visibility on and off, and I can lock and unlock layers. And that's useful for when you're like working on, the strokes and not the fills, or vice versa. So that can be kind of nice. Now if I scroll down, there we go. If I scroll down, I will get to onion skinning. Now what does that mean? So if I draw, I'm just going to draw a quickie, going to draw a quick And what is my radius? My line, 25, that's pretty good. If I just draw like a quick stick figure. Oh, wow. I'm zoomed way the heck out. There we go. So if I draw a stick figure and I move on and do, you know, another stick figure on another frame, you're going to see this sort of shadow here. And this shadow is called an onion skin. And what that means is it refers to you know, the skin of an onion, which is sort of translucent, but very specifically it refers to in animation when you are looking at a piece of tracing paper and you're drawing your animation on it, you are able to see the frame underneath it, and then you're able to do things like flip through your animation, which is a really nice thing about this timeline here, is that you can flip through it like an animator would with their tracing paper. But you know, this shadow that's underneath is the onion skin. And the onion skin, to set this up, you have to have this button up here. It says Show Overlays. And see, so if I click it off, it goes away. And you have to have it with, if I expand this, onion skin needs to be on. Okay? And then to get it for the individual layers, you have to make sure that it's on for the layer you're working on. So see, I can turn it off still here. And then you have to go down under, you know, again, I'm in the Object Data Properties, scroll down, and see under onion skinning, I can set the opacity of the onion skin. I can have it go like by different type of frame. And then I can have how many frames before it's going to onion skin and how many frames after. So if I'm only working with like, I don't care about what my frame after is, I can just do, so see, there's no frame before this, so it is only, and it's not showing the frame after, so there's nothing there, but this one has a frame before, and there you go. So you'll want to turn that on and off based on like what motion you're building. Are you building towards a keyframe? You know, where's the keyframe that you want to most directly refer to? You can also change the color of your onion skin, and I've actually, for my background, been using pretty brightly colored onion skins, just because it is that gray. But you know, with this basic file, you know, this green and blue are fine. So that's the basics of onion skins. I'm going to delete. So I should also talk about this down here, which is the timeline, but it's actually a dope sheet editor. And the dope sheet in Blender is where you can really manipulate the animation. One of the things, again, I like about it being Blender and not another program is that, you know, I can really nicely directly manipulate the keyframes the way I've done in Blender in the past. So say, for example, I want to stretch out an animation. I can pick the frames in here and, you know, even down to which layer the frame is on. I can pick the frames. You know, I can move them around, switch them around. I can even scale my timing by using the scale command in Blender. And it scales from wherever your, you know, wherever your timeline is set. So if I'm here, it's going to use this weirdly as the center of the scaling. So make sure you place that where you want it. But you know, that's a very powerful tool for changing around frames. The other cool thing you can do with this is I can select frames and use the duplicate command Shift D to duplicate and do that. So that's pretty neat. So, you know, very powerful, but that's down there by default. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually just highlight them all and hit X for delete. What did it do? Delete. Delete. There we go. And I'm going to show you now I'm going to show you how to actually create, I'm going to make an animation for you. And to do that, I'm going to make the radius of this 45 and strength 6. Okay, so let me explain what's going on in my editor now. So I'm in draw mode, and I have a pen, I have a paint bucket, I have an eraser, I have the ability to cut things, I can use an eyedropper tool. I also have these different line tools, which are very handy. And those are viewable with the T key because they are tools. Now, if I hit the N key, it's going to default to this item here, which is going to have the transform information for your strokes and everything. But I'm going to go to this tab under item that says tool, and that's where I can see the aspects of my actual pen. So what I can do here is change, you know, the smoothing. I'm going to keep this amount of active smooth. Active smooth will actually, if I see it, it starts a little jaggy, and then it smooths out. I might even do. No, I liked having it higher. I think. So I can have post-processing on the stroke. I can have, here are curves for, you know, basically when you're using like a pen tablet, things like that. So you can do lots of things with this. You can even change, the cursor. And yeah, so with active smooth at 1, there you go, can do a lot of nice things with your stroke. So you can change radius, you can change your strength, and as you can see, it's only at 0.6, and I want it at 0.1. So there we go, or at 1.0, sorry. My strength is set to my, there we go. My strength was set to my pen pressure. I want the radius set to pen pressure though. Cool. And then, so that's how to manipulate that. Oh, the other reason it's looking funny to me is because that's the pencil. So if I click in here, you can see I have lots, well, not lots yet, but I have some options. They're pretty good options, though. They're very strong options. There we go. Okay, so I like working with, and maybe this is because I'm doing Nemo right now, but I like the ink pen a lot. So we're going to leave that as is, and does that change anything? I felt like, Why did I feel like I could get some finer control in the other document? That's weird. You know, experiment with these settings to see what you like. That's why I keep drawing that loop. But that's the actual tool settings. As you can see, there's actually quite a few tool settings here, which is really nice. And then let's set up, I can show you the different things you can do with your materials here in a second. So let me get started on an animation. So I'm going to do real quick a standard Preston Blair run. And I'm going to try to make this fairly quick. I'm going to feel like a big chunky line right now. So I'm going to do... Nope, that head's too big. Okay. Yeah. So I am not ashamed to admit that I'm not a perfect artist all the time. In case you can't tell, I am definitely working from a guide here. Again, I really like that this is a... I really like that I can use the, you know, pen sensitivity, like you can in most things. So one thing, for example, I put this probably a little too low. So again, here's an example of I can go and course correct by going into edit mode and putting my stroke a little bit higher, and probably could even center him better. There we go. Back to draw. All this, by the way, with my tools is up here, like in Photoshop, which is kind of nice. I like working in here. All right, and then I'm gonna... All right, so there's that. And then I'm going to go... And all right, so I've got that. Oh, I did all that on the fills. Wow. So one thing, watch your layers. I drew that all on the fills layer. But again, I'm using Blender, so it's okay. We can make accidents. In fact, I want to recenter this. And so this is an example of like where you will want to, you know, your first frame, you're going to be messing up a lot. It's okay. I, you know, wanted to recenter him a few times. The other thing I can do, since I'm on the wrong layer, go to my edit mode, highlight all the strokes that I've made, hit M, and I can, you know, move to layer. So now it's on, if I turn off lines, now it's on lines, which is great. So now I can go back to draw. I can turn on my fills layer, and then I can take my gray material, and the way fills work is that, again, remember you're drawing around and it fills it in. So what I'm going to do, so I'm working at 75 for lines, make a mental note. I'm going to go to 10 for radius for the fill, and I'm just going to draw this in here, and I'm just going to use that to be the back. Now, one thing that I have seen when I do this, and don't mind that jagginess, that's, remember, this is mesh, so when you have you know, polygonal mesh that is going to have crisscrossing stuff, it's going to freak out a little bit. That's okay. Just finish your line. But one thing to note, that if you do get that, and so let me see if I can trick it into screwing up. Dang it. It's one of those things that when you're teaching people to do stuff, you can never like actually get it to make an error when you want it to make an error. I've had things basically where like, I've made a shape like this and then it'll have, something filled in because for whatever reason, like the mesh didn't quite work out right. What you do in those cases is I will, take on, and also, I mean, frankly, if I can be honest, what I also do when I have a case where, like, maybe, for example, so I'm using a Cintiq 16 right now, and, I can kind of do everything relatively easily without a lot of hand strain. But when I'm using my when I'm out and about and I'm using my Intuos like small tablet that I carry with me, I will take something in chunks so that I can not strain my hands. So think about that strategically. You don't have to do it all in one chunk. So if it's screwing up, or if your hand gets tired, don't be afraid to just call it quits and draw a straight line across and fill in things piece by piece. And again, remember, if you go into edit mode, these are meshes. So there they are. So and then because so if I were to render this, remember, so this is why I like to work in the dark background with Nemo. It looks rendered out here, but it is actually blank in the back. So let me try something here. I'm going to make, I'll show you how to make a new material. Add a material slot, makes a material, I click new, and I'm just going to make a material that is white. Actually, I might make it a little off-white just to, okay, so I make it a fill instead of a stroke. And then I'm actually going to off-white. Okay, there we go. Gonna take off the stroke. Let me try something. I've never used the paint bucket tool here, but I'm kind of curious to see how well it does. It does okay. It takes over some of my, let me see, leak size 3 pixels. What if I made you no pixels? Oh, my bad. Oh, okay, yeah, it's not 100% closed up. Okay, what leak size 1? Oops. Okay, so it takes over the lines a little bit when you use it this way. So in this case, what I might do is, make a fill and then color this in. For the sake of time, I'm not going to do all that. I'm just going to kind of like soldier on, and you know how to render. You've seen it. You would make a fill of a fill color for this part before you rendered it out. We're going to pretend, we're going to say that, and you're good to go, and then we're going to move on. So I want my lines to onion skin, but not necessarily my fills. So I'm going to turn off my fill onion skin, and we are going to, we have keyframes before setup. Before is going to be a green line, and so if I go to frame 2, now you see, okay, oh no, what happened? This is still, oh, let me name my material, body fill. You might be like, oh no, what happened? We have 75. nothing changed. Well, the reason it didn't change is because, see, there's still a frame of animation here. That means it goes on forever. We have to create new frames of animation here that represent the new movement we want. And that's what I'm going to do by putting down my first stroke. Bam. See now, and you see the gray, it's still there because, again, we haven't created the new version yet. So I'm just going to go and do okay. Now, see, there's an instance where I can go here. I can take my sculpt mode. I can fix it. Okay. So then I'm seeing, by the way, that something in my Nemo file got switched on or off, and it's requiring the sculpt to be edited to manipulate it. So you, by default, do not have to go and turn editing on a line to sculpt it. So what I'm going to do then, to get rid of this other bit, is go into vertex select mode on this line and delete this point. And then I'm going to edit mode, edge mode. That's also just deleting points and then going into edge mode and then like hacking off the rest of the stroke is a really good way to get the to erase a bit of a line like really cleanly. I'm just gonna draw in there. There we go. That's good enough for teaching purposes. Gonna sculpt mode real big. Kind of drop this whole thing down. And then I might even need to go into edit mode because I've manipulated these fills. I'm just going to delete the fills. All right, so that gives me a little more bending down with my... So see, I mean, I also use the sculpt mode to, maybe make like a pose a little more extreme or to change proportions. You can do lots and lots of good things with this. So it's a really great tool that we have. All right, I'm gonna cross over. Then I'm going to do my fills again. So as you can see, like one of the things I really like about this, and there I went overboard again, that's because I didn't zoom in enough. Oops. I'll lock that layer, sculpt, 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 sculpt. sculpt. You know, as you can see, this is the nice thing about the oh, that's why, because I didn't change my line size to 10. It's the nice thing about this tool being what it is. You know, we can go and edit it in a lot of ways. You know, when you're doing hand drawing, or at least if you're me doing hand drawing, you're spending a lot of your time erasing and correcting things. And you know, here, when you screw up, when you make a mistake, you don't have to go back and redo things necessarily. You can make your edits in a non-destructive way, and you know, be always moving forward. All right, so now I have that. The other thing I should point out, because like I'm not in love with how the head is shifting. Maybe I want the head to be the same in both frames. So I can go into edit mode. I can Control C the head on frame 1, and then I can take this head, X delete, and then I can Control V, and there's the head from frame 1, and then I can just move it down. And then that way, the character's head doesn't always appear to change. So if you have like, you know, the character have like a set look to them, this can be nice for keeping that consistent. Because I actually kind of like how it's this circle that doesn't quite close. I think that's a neat little detail. So frame 3, so watch, if I do that on frame 3, bam, that's actually a pretty neat way to start a frame, is by adding your you know, just pasting the thing that you want to keep consistent. All right, so I'm going to delete my fills on this. And then I'm going to do my lines for this pose. I could do better than that. There. Actually, you know what the problem was? It was the neck. You know, and this is an example of like, as an artist, where it's okay to second guess yourself and say, oh, you're not doing that right. All right, that's better. Keep his bum. All right. Sculpt, sculpt, sculpt. Have more space for the foot. Better. And then fill this in. Gonna actually follow my workflow, change my pen size. But you see, once you get into a flow with this, it actually becomes a pretty quick process. And I can look at my I can use my onion skinning as a guide, but I can also flip back and forth and get a good sense of what my animation looks like. So I'm going to stop there. I've been on for about an hour, but thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this little look into making and animating game sprites in Blender's 2.8. Again, remember to render. It's just like rendering a normal Blender animation. You go to let me go over here. Go to render. Actually, wait, where is it? Oh, output. You select your output folder. Select your output folder. You'd give it a name. So if I go to desktop and I make a new folder, I'll call it sprite demo, and then I'll call him sprite runner. I'll accept RGBA, PNG, frame end 1 through 3, and then our output is 512 by 512. We have our under the there it is, render. Under film, we have transparent set, and again, I didn't put fills on any of these, but you'll get the idea, just for the sake of not spending too much time and keeping everybody too long. But I have my frame start and end, 1 to 3 here, and again, that's all under output properties. And if I go to the render tab, all those are set. If I go up here to the render menu, I click render animation, and it outputs, and there it goes. And see, I have my blank. Oh, I hit the wrong button. If I go to my file explorer, and I open the folder, there they are. There's my sprites ready to be put into a game, and even numbered for you. So that's it. Again, thank you for watching. This has been great. I hope this is helpful, and happy animating.